letter meant and then translated the outside edges of the book. And they had put the Tree of Life, like the Elven Bible, as a whole second book around the entire
What?
art. Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that
Wow.
cool? Like, I
Yeah,
know.
that's amazing.
And that blew my mind as a child. It still blows my mind as an adult. Like, I
Yeah.
love that. Now they did a few pages and then it repeated,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like imagine 10-year-old me like figuring out that
Figuring that
secret
out. Yeah.
code. Like, I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I'm like, I know that the majority of people that read that book, they don't know that, but the
Wouldn't
people
get it. Yeah.
that figured that out, like, how special, you know?
Yes.
Oh, so
Yeah.
I like to, those are the types of things that I really try to incorporate in my books. And that's one of the reasons, too, that I've opted for heavily steeping myself in indie publishing because I have the freedom to do that. You know, if I
Of
wanted to
course,
have a
yeah.
whole secret language around the edges of the book, I'm going to do it. Like,
Yeah,
so
I can just see a publisher saying, this thing around the edge of the book, take that out."
oh, yeah, no,
Like,
you can't do that.
sort
Yeah.
of like, yeah.
Yeah.
Or, you have to build your way up to the point where you're allowed to do stuff like that and
Right.
like, but
Not I.
so
I'm just going to start from the
exactly,
forefront.
yeah.
Like,
Well, because life's too short to not
absolutely.
start with the thing that you want to do, isn't it? So,
Right.
I
Right.
totally agree. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
That brings me very nicely to what I think will be the last question. Okay.
Okay.
So, um why why horror? Why out of all of the genres? So, I mean, the disappearance of the Roanoke colony, why not? Oh, they were abducted by aliens and it becomes a sci-fi novel. Or they, the people of the people of the village decided to, leave and find, I don't know, find true love out there in the real world and forge new identities. Why is it? Because I do think there is something about, you know, horror and you know, history in the, I don't know, like a lot of messed up shit has happened
So
like throughout
much.
the course of history. And there, and mystery, obviously, the first thing you think of is not they just were never found again and lived happily ever after.
No, right.
You're
Yeah.
just like, what happened? What crazy thing happened? So yeah, so what would your answer for that be?
So I feel like I have, of course, brevity is not my strong point. So I have a layered answer for this.
Yeah, yeah, no worries.
Um,
Go for it,
yeah.
shoot.
So number one, we know history is always told by the victor, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that was really transformational for me when becoming an adult and getting further into learning that history was much more than just memorizing boring dates because like who wants to do that, you know?
Uh-huh.
And I started learning about, oh, you mean Christopher Columbus was actually a really horrible man? What? Tell me more. Like, oh, Pocahontas and John Smith weren't in this romantic relationship. It was more John Smith was a freaking creep. Oh, tell me more, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, when I started learning that the history that I had been taught in my American primary school days was not actually how things had happened, I'm drawn to that. And I'm like, wow, history's a lot more horrifying than this whitewashed, glossed over Disney version that we're fed often. Okay. I, again, talk about the religious trauma aspect of the Devil's Colony. You know, I have personal experiences with that myself because I've had quite a range of religious experiences in my life. And one such being a very entrenched and psychologically unhealthy period of time that I'll just call a spade a spade. We were basically in a cult, and it was not a cult of love and happiness for the rest of the world. It was basically one of these city on a hill, everybody else is a wolf in sheep's clothing situations.
Whoa.
And
Okay.
so it was like, if you don't believe the way that I believe, you're going to hell and you're awful. You know, it really was that pious Puritan mindset
Uh-huh.
speaks deeply to the trauma of my heart. So
And
throughout
that's
those years, I was not allowed to watch horror. I was not allowed
horror,
to
yeah.
read anything scary, was not allowed to in the in Books a Million, our local bookstore, I would always try to sneak over to the like witchy occult section, the new age, I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I want to know what this is about. Like I'm just fascinated by this. Not that I'm trying to practice or do any of this. I just want to know.
Well,
Um
that's it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so I actually grew up, even as an adult, a very young adult, I was major terrified of anything horror. I couldn't watch scary movies. My anxiety got too high. And then as I started to really come into my own with my own thoughts and see that intimate relationship that I have with fear as more of a tool to work through my own trauma and to be able to heal
Yeah.
some of my own inner issues, and really truly I see horror as a it's a healing mechanism for me, because when I'm writing horror, when I'm reading horror, when I'm watching horror, it's like you're in a safe situation that you can experience anxiety and fear, but it's controlled. And so if I'm watching the movie, I can pause it. I can walk out of the
That's
theater.
it. Yeah.
I don't do that, but if I wanted to, now I sit there and I love it because I'm like dead
Yeah.
inside, but in the beginning,
Yeah.
that's how it
That's
was.
it. Yeah.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
honestly was like an immersion therapy of working through my anxiety. And then writing horror too, you get to really go to the depths of the darkest pieces of humanity, not just your own, but like what you've seen and what others have experienced. And I feel like incorporating elements like serial killers and just really awful, horrible people, it brings an awareness for me in my everyday life to just help me to live a peaceful existence and really keep a you know what I mean, like protect
Yes, I
myself
do.
in
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
bubble, and to get through that anxiety and mental health struggles that I've had in the past. So
Mhm.
horror was my genre of choice for, after I came out of a decade of research writing, working on my PhD, all of that steeped in a totally different culture, a whole different life. I was like, I really think that I think I could write a horror story. I think I have such a strong relationship to fear because I'm afraid of a lot of things in my life because of my sheltered
Well,
childhood,
that's it. Yeah.
that yeah, that I'm like, I think I could really tap into what fear feels like, and then how do I overcome that fear, or how does that fear shape me, shape my characters, shape society. So yeah, it's a very heavy topic for me, actually.
It
I
certainly
didn't
is.
realize. I mean, it's that's heavy. That's a lot.
It is. It's very heavy. I mean, I thought of so many things when you were saying that. I mean, the first thing was kind of related to what you just said about horror being quite therapeutic and a way to sort of deal with things after having anxiety and fear, like quite a low threshold for fear in as a child. Almost everyone I've spoken to who is really into horror now in their 20s and 30s are people who were terrified of it uh when they were children. I couldn't deal with horror movies. I remember my dad he put on the first Jaws movie when I was like
No.
13 and I couldn't handle it. I just I I said, you've got to turn it off, you've got to turn it off. Like, and now I just wish that I don't know, just what, because I would have been in the best place to watch it.
Right.
It would have been the most affecting way to sort of watch it,
And
to
get
just
through that. I
get through it and deal
wonder,
with it. Yeah.
I would love to see, because I go through that kind of struggle as a parent.
Yeah.
I have a 7-year old. Well, Bert and I
Mhm.
have a 7-year old, and
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah, I
of
can see
people.
him. He's in the
Yeah, he's
background.
yeah, he's also say hi, Luca. But he will ask us to watch scary things, or because he goes to horror conferences with us. It's not that he doesn't have any exposure, but we really try to minimize his exposure as much as we can, because we don't want him to be too afraid or traumatized or have night, because I had night terrors
Yeah.
as a child. He has nightmare, like we really
That's
have
not
been
a bad
conscious of that.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
However, I also wonder, am I not repeating history with myself, because I wasn't, I was told it brings the devil into the home, and like you can't, all these,
Oh
like
yeah.
it was a very closed door situation. And so I'm like, but all of the people that I know that watched horror and scary stuff as a kid, they're like, "Oh, I was watching Pennywise at 4 years old and I'm good," like I watch
Yeah.
these things now and I'm like, I don't know, you just try to figure out where